in my opinion, there's just three things that really defines the core of what we do. And if you get these three things right, you can throw rocks and stones at a strategy and it will stand. It's called the theory of practice, the theory of change, and the logic model framework. And whether you develop a PowerPoint presentation as a strategy or a document like this, it actually doesn't matter. The only thing that's going to survive individuals once they've left the organization is that thing, those three things. Because people come and go. The only thing people are going to look for at the end of the day is these three things. Why? It will tell us what your intent was. It will tell us what your view, your worldview, your strategy was. And it will tell us what was the outcomes you foresee. Just to share this with you, I was asked to deliver an opinion on a flagship program that was funded to the tune of 70 million rand that has been in education for the last 7 years. I've only asked for 3 documents in order to do that. Because that contains the strategy, the thinking, the outcomes, the change they wanted to see. Subsequent to that, of course, you're going to do monitoring, you're going to do evaluation, all of that is done. But it all comes from when we do monitoring, we monitor the program outcomes and activities. When we do evaluation, we want to measure the difference we've made and the impact what is really the change that resulted from our resources that was invested. And here's the problem. So 7 years ago, we weren't so fixated on a theory of practice, a theory of change, and a logic model framework. It was new words, it wasn't really in practice. Here's the second problem. Every funding cycle, which means every 12 months, the organization added change because of the changing circumstances. So here's the question. If you now assess a flagship program after 70 million rand over 7 years, what are we going to measure? The first theory of change, the second theory of change, the third one, or the seventh one? Because as our thinking evolved, as evidence come to the fore, we keep on changing that. So what I would encourage you to do is, this is cast in stone. And every year you want to change it, a new CEO comes in, a new program gets developed, or the focus of the program changes, you can add to it. But you can't change until it's closed out and done. So you've got to document, which is why if you don't do any other documents, these are the 3 documents you have to develop. So the first one being the theory of practice. Now let me just put it in context. A number of you've got foundations, but very few of you have the opportunity to start from scratch. You inherit a lot of stuff, right? Very few people have got that luxury to set up a foundation, to determine a new strategy. You come in, you've got to manage what is there. Which is why you're going to look for these documents. What was the decision? What was the intention? Why was it designed that way? Why are they working with these NGOs? Why are they working in those communities? So this is the pathway, the roadmap. Okay. So the theory of practice is the organizational document. It comes first. Why? Because it tells us what is the change you want to make. Now let me put it in context. Until the theory of practice is developed, you cannot develop a theory of change. I don't know if you heard what I said. Until the theory of practice has been developed, you can't develop a theory of change. Why? Because you first got to describe what is the change you foresee. Say, for instance, now, and this is my concern with the words we use, companies will typically say, our vision is to contribute to the sustainability of all people in South Africa. So what is the change? We use words to make positioning statements. Now, the question is, so how? Firstly, are we going to measure the sustainability of all citizens in South Africa? Number two, how are we going to do that? And then companies have got education programs, they've got health programs, they've got sports development programs, and then they've got arts and culture programs. So the question is, how does those portfolios contribute to the sustainability of all citizens in South Africa? It's almost impossible to link it. So the theory of practice is the overall, typically for a foundation, the foundation strategy. The theory of change is for each portfolio as well as each program. And until you know what is the change you want to make, you cannot develop the theory of change. So, developing this strategy, the first thing is developing the theory of practice. Guys, a strategy is a strategy. No strategy looks different to any other strategy, and it's not different in our own sector.
So, in the university, it's your strategic plan document.
Exactly. Exactly. Absolutely. So you'll see, and I've put it down for you. So there's a vision, there's a mission, there's strategic objective, there's strategic intent, there's goals. This document doesn't look any different. Okay? So I don't want you to think it's like, now we need a different thing. And nobody can tell you either your theory of practice or your theory of change is wrong. Because if you've documented, you're going to tell us what your logic was behind this. So if you want to empower the citizens, make the citizens of South Africa more sustainable, you can choose to do it through education. There's no one that's telling you, well, you should have done enterprise development. No one is wrong, as long as it's documented. And so this documentation process speaks to what it is you want to achieve. What was your thinking? What was your evidence? What was your logic? What was the processes? What was the research? What is the one thing you want to do? So the vision is right in the middle, and it explains to us what we're going to do, to whom we're going to do it, when we're going to do it, how we're going to do it. It's no different to any other strategic development process. The point is, you've got to start somewhere. And most of us, because of a legacy situation, start from an inheritance. That's the biggest problem. So here's what I do find is that we're trying to make fit after the fact. That's the biggest problem. So we would have funded education because inadvertently we wanted to improve the quality of education, right? And we could choose how we're going to do it. Nobody tells us you've got to fund science and maths. Nobody tells you you've got to provide computers. Nobody says you've got to have interventions for principals or teachers or nobody tells you that that is the road you chose, as long as it's documented. So you've got to say, what are my objectives, my principles, my criteria, and this is all that we're going to cover tomorrow. The investment areas, your sustainability, your budget. Let me give you a case study, and let me just move this a little way. So, this organization, actually doesn't matter who it is, but I do think their name is on there. Their vision for that organization, that foundation, that trust, that CSI division was to create shared value. That was the objective, that was the intent. How are they going to do it? You can see here's different approaches. The one is going to be through products and solutions. One is going to be through a specific business model, resource circular. One's going to be from a stakeholder perspective, and one's going to be an environmental progress. It gives a very broad indication that there's going to be an environmental portfolio, because that's what the intent was. One is going to be focused on products and services, because that is what the intent was. So every theory of change, every theory of practice is unique, and nobody's is wrong, because that is the way you saw change happen. You saw an objective, you saw an outcome.